ECHN is a great organization. In the four walls, we care about so many different patients at Manchester, Rockville, and all of our outpatient areas. But more importantly, we do a lot of volunteerism out in the community. And the more that we strengthen that in the community, the more that we strengthen our organization. And many of our employees throughout ECHN live in our community. So it's vital that we have that community connection. We're here in Rockville now. COVID is, in my mind, coming down to the point where it's not gone, but it's at a level that's low. And we've been opening up Rockville back up. So we have 3 new psych units over the last year. We have a new inpatient medical unit up on Bissell 3. And we have a lot of outpatient areas that are thriving and growing, rehab, cardiac rehab. So this hospital is really an important part of Rockville and Vernon, supporting the community. And that's just another part of it. So Nina and I are executive sponsors of our Diversity and Inclusion Committee, which we call the Unity Collarborative. There's a lot of members here today on that committee. We started about 1.5 years ago, and it's important that we continue that conversation and continue that story as we move forward. So I'm going to turn over to Nina for the next part, but thanks everyone for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good morning. Nice to see you all today. I'll start with, you may have noticed some of the posters honoring pioneers in the healthcare field. They're around the room. If you didn't get a chance to see them before breakfast, please stay and take a look afterwards. Some great cause for celebration. We hope you enjoy this morning with us. We certainly thank Kimberly Forbes and many others from ECHN who's coordinated the details of this event. And I'd like to recognize Dr. and Senator Jeff Gordon from the 35th District. Thank you, Dr. Senator, for joining us.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
And I'd also, of course, like to thank our partner, Terry Lynn Rogers. She's the president of Vernon Community Network, also serves on Vernon Town Council. And Terry Lynn, would you say a few words?
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first Black History Month breakfast. So give yourself a hand. So yes, thank you so much. So the Vernon Community Network is a group that identifies and coordinates services for the enrichment of our community. So I'd like to thank Kimberly and ECHN for partnering with us. So a little bit about my Black history in the community. As you were coming in, there were pictures out in the hall. I was born here in Rockville, and my mom, of 92 years old, was born at Rockville General Hospital, but it wasn't this Rockville General, it was the original Rockville General Hospital. So I thank her for being part of my history. So the Vernon Community Network, we have an office at 116.5 Grove Street in Rockville, the Nook, and we do outreach programs there at our office space. So we all know what Black history is about. It started in 1976 with the first Black history when it came about. So we all here in this room know the purpose and what we should be doing as a community, as a person in our community. So with that, I would just like to thank everyone for being here at the first Black History Month event in Rockville. So, and I hope, a lot of people have been asking, are we going to do it again? Of course we're going to do it again. So why stop at once, right? So, I'd just like to say that thank you for being here and celebrating this first event with us. Thank you.
All right.
Now it's my great pleasure to introduce the Bloomfield High School Gospel Choir, known as Voices of Inspiration, under the direction of Lisa Clayton.
All right.
Stood on a bar.
At Phillips. Oh, and UConn. Yeah. The best, the best, the best.
Trying to get Jay to
Bring it, Bloomfield. You guys, I'm in church now. Yes.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. We're so honored to be here to celebrate Black History with you. Thank you so much for the invitations. Can we give them a round of applause? We'll begin this morning with the first verse of what's been come the Negro National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing. It is the tradition that we stand. So if you will please join us, and please, if you know it, sing along.
Lift every voice and sing. Lift every voice and sing till life in heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of it. Lift every voice and sing. The stars arise, high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Lift every voice and sing. Sing a song. Lift every voice and sing a song. Sing a song. Lift every voice and sing a song. Facing the rising sun. Of a new day begun. Let us march on. Let us march on to victory.
Here we go. 1, 2. I love you, Lord. Come on, Janae.
For your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hand. From the moment that I wake up till I lay my head, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. 'Cause all my life you have been faithful.
Okay, that's it.
And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
I love your voice. You have led me through the fire. In darkest nights, you are close like no other. I know you as a father. I know you as a friend. And I have lived in the goodness of God. 'Cause all my life you have been faithful.
Oh, yes, you have.
In all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
Your goodness is running after me.
Yes, yes.
Your goodness is running after me.
Yes.
With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Oh Lord, your goodness is running after me.
Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me.
And all my life you have
I will sing of the goodness of God.
Oh, I will.
Oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
And if you believe it, just say that little line with us.
Oh, I will sing
Of the goodness.
of the goodness of God.
Just one more time all over the room.
Oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
Now I have the pleasure of introducing a colleague of ours and a good friend of ours from the Family Development Center, Kwasi Ntem-Mensah. He's going to be giving one of his poems to us today. An amazing poet. He's part of our team, and we welcome Kwasi. Thank you.
Good morning. This one is for their ancestors, for their sacrifice. It's titled Singing a Joy Unto My Blackness. And I start. After all the hustle, you choose to recognize me in a month. After building you up with my blood as my water, my nudity laid bare for the world to stare. You choose to applaud me in a month. After suckling your children, amid rivers of blood all over me, raping my mother for her children to stir, you choose to acknowledge me in a month. The impudence and arrogance. Forget not the hand that fed you, Bible held high in your left, blunt knife held low in your right. So when I look to him, you stabbed me deep in my belly. You only wounded me for a second. Yet do I still ask, do you talk about me in a month? What you never took and can never have, my soul, my identity, my story. All the season signs, all the synthetic and organic will never wash away the iniquities. I will be celebrated all year round. All year round, my story will be told. All year round. Thank you.
So before I ask our next speaker to come up, I'd want to share a bit of an introduction. Our guest speaker today is Dr. Nicole Jackson, and she serves in a few roles at ECHN, primarily Maternity Care and Family Planning Center here at Rockville General Hospital. She provides outpatient maternity care and family planning services with a focus on disease prevention and health promotion. Dr. Jackson also is a member of our faculty for the Family Medicine Residency Program that's located in Manchester. And she obtained her undergraduate degree in anthropology from Yale University and her medical degree from Harvard Medical School. Dr. Jackson has years of experience working as a full-spectrum primary care and urgent care provider at a federally qualified healthcare center in Dorchester, Mass., serving medically and socially complex patients in a predominantly low-income, ethnically and linguistically diverse neighborhood. Dr. Jackson has a special interest in diversity, equity, and inclusion and anti-racism work, and has served as the director of diversity programs in the Department of Family Medicine at Boston Medical Center. So we are very proud to have our guest speaker come up and share some words with us today, Dr. Nicole Jackson.
Good morning, everyone. I am honored to speak with you all this morning at this Black History Month breakfast. Thank you to Kimberly Forbes for the invitation, and to ECHN and the Vernon Community Network for having me as your keynote speaker. I was asked to speak to you this morning about something that I'm passionate about. So the name of my talk is Centering Black History, which includes his story and her story, to move towards health equity. What I'd like to do first is share a little bit about my story as a Black girl who aspired to become a physician, and why centering Black voices and health equity have become my mission. I was born in New York City and moved to East Hartford, one of the towns that ECHN serves, at the age of 1. As a child of Jamaican immigrants, our faith in God, family, and our culture were all that we had, and it would be through education, hard work, and discipline that we would hope to obtain upward mobility. My parents divorced at the age of 3, and our 2-parent household turned into and remained a single-parent household. Although my mother struggled financially, she sacrificed and toiled so that I could add access to educational and extracurricular opportunities, even if it meant that she had to fundraise on her own. I am so grateful to my mother for believing in me and pushing me from such a young age, even when I didn't see my God-given potential. You see, I was the type of kid that always wanted to become a doctor. My favorite subjects were math and science, especially those science subjects related to biology. I was fascinated by the intricacy of the human body, and I loved to read and teach. My only positive exemplar was my pediatrician, who happened to be Dr. Frank Bush, who some of you may know, a recently retired pediatrician who was formerly associated with ECHN. There were no doctors in my family, and most importantly, I had never met a doctor with brown skin like mine. In fact, high educational achievement for students of color seemed rare and unusual, even as an elementary school student. In the East Hartford public school system, for example, my mother advocated for me to be a part of the IDEA program, which was an academic enrichment program for gifted students. I was admitted to the program in the 5th and 6th grade, but I didn't enjoy it because I felt alone. Despite being in a racially diverse school district, I was only one of 2 Black kids in the entire program. I felt out of place, as though I didn't belong, even though I had earned a spot in the program. I started to wonder, why aren't there more kids here that look like me? I received a full scholarship to attend Watkinson School in Hartford from the 7th to the 12th grade. My mother was determined to send me to the school because of their college counseling program and their 100% college acceptance rate. I am thankful to my advisor, Mrs. Miller, who encouraged me to apply to the UConn School of Medicine's mini medical and dental school program for high school students. This was the first time I met doctors who looked like me, such as the founding director, Dr. Marcia Hurley, and other Black and brown students with a passion for medicine. This career path felt possible for the first time. I applied to a number of colleges with reputable pre-medical programs, including some of the Ivy League schools, with the steadfast encouragement, again, from my mother, who saw the potential in me that I didn't see. I didn't know anyone of color who had graduated from an Ivy League school, and didn't even perceive that an Ivy League institution would welcome someone that looked like me. Many doubted that I'd be the kind of applicant they'd want, but thankfully my mother's encouragement was louder than their negativity. I had a wonderful experience at Yale University where I began to explore what a career in primary care would look like. To expand on what I mean by primary care physicians are physicians trained in either family medicine, general internal medicine, or general pediatrics, who serve as the entry point for patients' healthcare needs, not limited by problem origin, organ system, or diagnosis. They also advocate for patients as they navigate the complex healthcare system, diagnose and treat acute and chronic health issues, and provide both disease prevention and health promotion. Throughout my college and medical training, I learned about the many imperfections of our healthcare system, including the ways that it continuously produced worse outcomes for patients of color. Some examples include, in 2017, the life expectancy for Black men was 10 years lower than for white women in 2017. In 2020, the Black maternal mortality rate is nearly 3 times higher than the white maternal mortality rate. And again in 2020, The Black fetal mortality rate, which is defined as the intrauterine death of a fetus greater than 20 weeks gestation, is more than 2 times higher than the white fetal mortality rate. In 2021, the age-adjusted death rate for drug overdoses for Blacks is 20% higher than it is for whites. In 2019, Black people were dying from all types of cancer at a rate 14% higher than whites, despite the rate of diagnosis being similar. And in 2019, Black people were dying from heart disease at a rate 23% higher than whites, despite the prevalence being higher among white adults. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Of all the forms of inequality, injustice in healthcare is the most shocking and inhumane. These statistics are appalling and cannot remain our normal." I chose to become a family physician because I wanted to walk alongside and bear witness to patients who have worse health outcomes due to injustices in society and in our healthcare system, regardless of age, gender, or organ system. I wanted to understand their stories, amplify their voices, and advocate for a change to this broken system, especially for Black and brown patients who have experienced the same structural barriers, microaggressions, and discrimination as I have. This work for me is personal. I firmly believe that diving into history gives us a better understanding of our current so we can direct our future. Similarly, we cannot make sense of these racial health disparities without understanding the legacy of racism on our society and healthcare system. At this Black History Month breakfast, I'd like to take a few minutes just to talk about a select few of the many historical insults that have made race a social driver of health outcomes in the United States. First, I'd like to discuss the chronological timeline of the citizenship status of Blacks. I give credit to the Racial Equity Institute for this illustration. From the year 1619, when the first enslaved Africans were brought to the United States, through the end of 1865, with the abolishment of slavery, Black people in the United States were chattel property. We were not even considered human. This lasted for 246 years, or 62% of our nation's existence. From the year 1865 to 1965, Jim Crow laws were in effect, which codified racism and racialized segregation into law, and denied freed Blacks any citizenship rights that white people enjoyed. This period lasted for 100 years and constituted 25% of our nation's history. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 banned discrimination in education, housing, public facilities, and employment. And with the Voting Rights Act of 1965, President Johnson declared that all Americans must have the privileges of citizenship regardless of race. We are now in the post-civil rights era, where Blacks have civil rights, yet are significantly behind whites as it relates to wealth, educational, and health outcomes, among others. These differences or disparities are a direct result of Blacks being explicitly excluded from resources and power for 87% of our nation's history, and continues to be excluded in more insidious ways today. This effect is what we call structural racism, which is a system of structuring opportunity, value, and advantage based on race that spans across multiple institutions. This definition of structural racism was coined by Dr. Kamara Jones, who is also a family physician and public health scholar on racism and health. One example of structural racism is the impact of redlining on housing segregation, the racial wealth gap, and social determinants of health. The Homeowners Loan Corporation, or the HOLC, and the Federal Housing Administration, or the FHA, were created in the 1930s through the New Deal to provide emergency lending to those at risk of losing their homes due to the Great Depression, and to also restructure mortgages to make home ownership more affordable. As such, the HOLC created residential security maps of 239 cities to demarcate neighborhoods that were considered safe for real estate investments and mortgage sales, and to protect lenders from overextending themselves financially to those who may be more likely to default on a loan. Race was one of the factors used to determine the creditworthiness of a neighborhood. Neighborhoods that were predominantly Black or mixed race were redlined. The FHA incorporated these residential security maps into their underwriting handbook. Racially restrictive covenants written into deeds reinforced redlining by restricting the ownership of a property to certain races. These practices discouraged the introduction of new businesses into predominantly Black neighborhoods and made it very difficult for Black people to purchase a home or obtain a loan. With home ownership being a pathway to generational wealth, scholars have argued that housing discrimination is a large driver of the racial wealth gap between whites and Blacks today. Furthermore, even though redlining and racially restrictive covenants are now illegal, the composition of the neighborhoods have not changed significantly. Housing segregation has still been maintained. It is therefore no surprise to find school segregation, concentrated poverty, reduced rates of Black home ownership, and high rates of unemployment and crime in neighborhoods that have been historically redlined. Racial housing segregation impacts health outcomes through a concept called social determinants or drivers of health. Social determinants of health is defined by the circumstances in which people are born, grow, live, work, play, and age that impact access to resources and opportunities to promote health. This includes socioeconomic factors, physical environment, health behaviors, and access to high-quality health care. Interestingly, healthcare only drives about 20% of one's health outcomes. Instead, socioeconomic factors and physical environment drives 50% of one's health trajectory, which are directly influenced by zip code. Therefore, in a strategy to promote health equity, it is insufficient for us to focus on the care that we provide within our institution. We must also extend into the communities we serve and be intentional about our partnerships and impact. Equity is the state in which life outcomes are not predicted by one's identity. It is both a process and an outcome, and requires us to center the voices of those who have historically not been invited to the table. To achieve racial equity, it is not enough to be race neutral. Rather, we need to be anti-racist, meaning that we are eliminating policies and practices that have produced racial differences in outcome. We at ECHN pride ourselves on being a health organization that serves the region of Eastern Connecticut and continue to make healthy happen. My challenge to you is, how do we know that we are making healthy happen without applying a health equity lens to our work in our institution and community? I invite you to reflect on how we can strengthen our organization by incorporating these values. Strategies may include hosting educational programs on racial and health equity topics for leadership, providers, and staff, collecting health outcome data and stratifying them by race to assess for any institutional health disparities, collaborating with local librarians to understand the legacy of structural racism in our communities, creating more opportunities for community organizations to engage with healthcare professionals and staff on the needs of specific communities within our catchment area, and supporting and collaborating with community partners in their efforts to dismantle structural racism in our communities. I thank you for inviting me to speak with you and reflecting with me on a small piece of our vast Black history as it relates to health. I invite you to continue to do reading on your own to learn about medical racism, but to also learn about the many Black scholars and health professionals who have made a positive contribution to the health of our society. I welcome any questions that you may have. Thank you.
You had a lot of statistics about healthcare and the different racial groupings and whatnot. How do you find Connecticut in particular as opposed to national rates? Do you feel Connecticut's above, equal, lower, improving?
You know, that's a great question. To be honest, I don't know as much about local data because my previous institution was in Boston, so I knew a lot more about Boston compared to Connecticut. So I would love to kind of work with local librarians and kind of understand the statistics here in Connecticut. That's actually been harder for me to find, to be honest. But I'm sure it's out there.
Do you find Massachusetts doing pretty well?
With regard to health disparities, so Massachusetts is interesting because it's very different in terms of the health scheme compared to Connecticut. We actually, in Massachusetts, they have a essentially mandatory health insurance for everybody. And so, and even before we had the Affordable Care Act through the Obama administration, they actually had a universal health coverage. And they had a safety net. So even patients that may not be eligible for insurance because of citizenship status, maybe be undocumented, they still had at least a baseline. So health disparities were a little bit different, but we even still, so even though Massachusetts was a little bit better compared to the national average, we still did see some differences in populations.
Still work to be done.
Always look to that, yes.
You mentioned socioeconomic factors. Will the wealth gap have to be eliminated before the health gap can be eliminated? Or can we do it with socialized medicine, or how would you do that?
I think that's a really great question because we see that everything is so intertwined. You see wealth impacts health and health impacts wealth. So it's kind of hard to say, can we do one without the other? We have to really do multiple things at the same time. In terms of socialized medicine, I mean, I do think that there is a role for having universal health coverage and to really simplify our health insurance scheme. I think it's very complicated and it's create a lot of administrative overhead, that might be unnecessary. And honestly, it makes it very confusing for patients to navigate. Walking alongside patients, even myself as a patient, I'm a physician, and it's still confusing for me sometimes to navigate. So I can't imagine patients who don't have the health literacy. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot of work that we could do to simplify the health insurance scheme in general, whether it be what we consider socialized medicine or just making things less, having less variability between health insurance plans, making some standardization.
Good morning, and thank you for your speech.
Good morning.
Are you aware of any kind of social programs that can help non-traditional students get into the medical field?
That's a great question. So I know that actually the program that I mentioned, the ECHN mini mental program still exists, at least for high school students who are interested in and who might come from underrepresented backgrounds. Still in existence, and Dr. Marjorie Hurley is still leading that program at UConn. So that's definitely one that's available. In terms of other non-traditional programs, I'm not specifically aware, but I know that a lot of medical schools tend to have programs that are directly reaching out to those who might be interested in going to the medical field. There are also baccalaureate programs. So these are programs for folks that may have gone through college already, maybe didn't major in biological science or didn't do pre-medical courses, but then later decide they want to make a career change. Those post-grad programs are meant to actually prepare people for medical school. So that's another route.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. We are going to close our program with one more song from Voices of Inspiration. So please welcome them back.
Thank you for your message. Oh, beautiful. All right, you all, we're so grateful to be ending this with you. We sing a song called Turn It Around. And I love the song because I believe God can turn any situation around, right? All right, now this one we're going to have a little fun with, so I need you to sing with us, all right? So there's a part that says turn it around. What do you think I want you to do? Okay. So, and feel free to stand up, dance, and let's just enjoy this moment together. All right. Thank you, Kelly.
You guys, we're in church. Come on.
Come on, Sarah.
You turn my weeping into worship. You turn my pressure into praise. You turn my mourning into dancing. And I will bless your holy name. Turn it around. 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 Yes, Lord, yes, Lord. You turn it around. You turn my weeping into worship. You turn my pressure into praise. You turn my morning into dancing, and I will bless your holy name. Turn it around. 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 Yes, Lord, yes, Lord. You turn it around. You turn my weeping into worship. You turn my pressure into praise. You turn my mourning into dancing, and I will bless your holy name. Turn it around. 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 Yes, Lord, yes, Lord. You turn it around. You turn it around. 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 You turn it around. Turn it around. Turn it around. Turn it around. And I'll say, yes, Lord, yes, Lord. You turn it around. Everybody, here we go. Turn it around. 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 Yes, Lord, yes, Lord. And yes, Lord, yes, Lord. And I'll say, yes, Lord, yes, Lord. You turn it around.
Marvin, can you take a picture with you? With our friend?
This is over here.
All set.